Alright guys, well we are standing in front of this naked frame with just the engine and the forks on it basically, and the next part of this series will be to take the engine out, and I did promise I would do that here with you. So this is going to be a quick video, and just to show you how I like to take the engine out when I'm on my own. The engine weighs about 65 kilos, what's that, about 130 pounds, and it's not something you can lift out of the frame. Well, not on your own anyway, so I'm going to show you how I do it. So, as always, gloves on. After watching the video that I'd recorded to show you, I discovered for some reason my microphone wasn't working, so I'm having to revert to do a audio overlay. All I was doing at this point was explaining to you how I was going to get this engine out of the frame on my own. At this point I'm just explaining that there are two understruts on the left and right of the bike, which are connected with 2 bolts at the rear, 2 bolts at the front, and a rubber bushed engine mounting bolt. Now what I want to do is get the whole engine sitting on the floor, including frame, release all the bolts on the understruts, take the understruts off, and then remove the 2 main engine bolts. There are 2 of. One is at the lower end of the engine, which I'm now pointing at, and the other one is a long bolt which is just above this, and once these bolts are out, the engine is free. And then once the engine is free and all the bolts are removed, then I can just lift the frame over the engine. But at the moment the bike's sitting on the center stand, which I want to remove first, which is what I was just pointing at and explaining. So I'm going to go ahead, drop the engine on its belly, or the whole bike on its belly, undo everything and move the frame over the engine. That is pretty much what I was explaining, and then for some reason my microphone started working, and we'll take it from there. So let's crack on. So I've just placed a block of wood on my upturned bike rolling stand. I'll just drop the bike onto it now. Once that's on there steady, I can take the center stand off. One big fat bolt, and the other side. And the center stand just pulls away. So put those back in so I don't lose them. Now I'm going to release the 2 14mm nuts on the lower engine strut, left and right side. Just be aware that the engine's sitting on your piece of wood or whatever. If you haven't got the whole thing on some sort of paddock stands, don't want to be forcing it over. These bolts are tight. Just like that. There we go. And that's exactly what I meant. Just make sure you didn't want that to happen. So undo the bolts, and up front you have the front engine mounts here. So now we have the 2 bolts out at the rear. We've taken up the engine mount bolt, and we're going to take out the 2 front bolts now from the front. There's 2 12mm bolts. I'm just going to take one out and loosen the second one, not take it out completely just yet. and then basically do that on the other side. The same procedure. The reason I put this here was so that I had a bit of room to work on getting the main stand out. But I don't want it there now. I want to have the engine sitting on something that I can roll around. So I'm going to lift this away, turn this roller over, sit the bike back down on that, and then I can release everything and the engine will be sitting in there and I can just take the frame up. So I'll just do that now. So, drop the engine into here, just makes things a bit easier. Ugh. Sometimes it's a pain when the front wheel keeps turning like that, look, see? So now I'm going to release all of the bolts, starting with the engine frame, the front mounting bolt, then the one bolt that I loosened up but I didn't remove, and then what happens is the front strut will come off in my hand. You'll see it on the other side in a minute. And that's the one side out. So that's this side out. Now, the only thing that's now holding this in place is the bottom main bolt and the top frame bolt. And as soon as I take the top frame bolt out, the engine will sort of tilt forward. So I'm just going to put this block of wood under here, just to support that. As I'm on my own, I need to lift this up now to get some wood under there. So I'm going to use a car jack and place it underneath the suspension mounting bolt. I'll just drop this down a little bit. And just watch it doesn't spin round. Slide that under there with your wood. There you go. That's sitting there quite nicely on there now. So now I can undo the top engine bolts, the long pin. You have to go through this hole to get to it. 14, it's a 14. So there we have the top and the bottom nuts are off, the holding bolts, and now it's just a case of driving them out. So I like to take a hammer and an old wrench extension through the hole. So just support the engine a bit and take out the front bolt. There you go, the front is now released. Now we just need to remove the bottom bolt. Same procedure. Along the rear bolt, the bottom bolt. And that is that. Our frame and engine are free. And all I'm going to do, I say all I'm going to do, is lift up the frame over the engine and move it to one side. So let me just clear a bit of space here. There we go. It was the engine studs for the exhaust pipe I was getting caught on. There we go. Oh, I'll stand the engine back up. Whew. Right guys, wasn't very elegant, was it? I've done this a few times before, and it didn't make so much of a pig's ear of it as I did this time round. The reason why that was so difficult for me was two things. I didn't take the studs out for the exhaust pipe and they were catching on the front frame, and I forgot to take the rear suspension linkage off, so that was getting in my way as well. But that's the general idea. The general idea is you release all the nuts and bolts, put the engine, support the engine and lift the frame over it. Maybe you've seen how not to do it on your own. It is possible. It's probably easier if you block the front wheel so it doesn't wobble all over the place. That doesn't help, or even if you've got that off first. So yeah, wasn't the smartest way of doing it, but that is in general how I like to get the engine out. Support the engine, remove all the bolts, lift the frame over the engine. Oh, I've got a bit of a sweat on today and it's only 9.5 degrees in here today. Yeah,